Hello everyone, Chris Whitten here. So I wanted to go ahead and make a second video this week. I've been trying to do 2 videos a week, and one of them being a New Music Monday, where I record a track and make a little video of it and put it out. Got a little behind, didn't get that done this week. In lieu of that, and considering the documentary is coming out about my old friend Ben Dorcy, and I have so many Ben Dorcy stories to share, I decided to go ahead and just do a second video and tell a few choice stories about Ben, and I share those with you today. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So in that last video, I gave a little history of just who Ben Dorcy was. You know, he was the first roadie, the first man ever to be called a roadie, the first band boy, as they were formerly known, to ever leave the employee of a venue and go out on the road and go to work for an actual artist. And then, of course, he ended up in Hollywood and was John Wayne's valet. And, of course, he also worked for Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings, Chris Christopherson, just about everybody. He was close friends with a lot of people. He was something else. You know, Willie actually referred to him as his spare parts. He said as they were getting older, he was dependent on Ben if he needed any parts. So I remember not long after I went to work for Kevin Fowler, and Ben was on the road with us. It's probably about 3 months into my tenure with Kevin. We played our first hometown show there in Austin at Midnight Rodeo, and it was, you know, a big event. We had a sold-out crowd, and then of course everybody's friends and significant others and so forth were all there for that show. We had quite a few guests. So when I first went to work for Kevin, Ben wasn't there that first weekend. Ben was actually out for a couple of weeks with Willie at that point, and everybody told me about him, and they said, "Oh, you're gonna love Ben. He's something else." And they were talking about the fact that they knew he had gotten dentures, so I guess Willie had paid for that for him. The first time I met him was actually the first time all the guys had seen him with his new teeth, and that was kind of a big deal at that point in time. And it was kind of comical because they weren't quite fitted yet, and they kind of rattled around in his head. And if you looked at him and said, "Hey Ben, let me see your new teeth," instead of just smiling, he would spit them out in his hand and try to hand them to you. Anyhow, we played that show there in Austin, and after the show we had a whole bus full of guests, everybody, you know, friends and family, and you couldn't hardly walk on the bus or walk off the bus, and everybody had a drink and just visiting and having a good time. Well, our bus driver Brett, he wanted to unwind as well, but he had to get the bus back out to the bus yard. Obviously, he couldn't drink. So at that point, we decided, well, why don't we just try to get everybody off the bus and tell them anybody that wants to hang out, we'll just go out there to the bus yard and go on to Kevin's house and hang out and visit and everything. So everybody was off the next day. So Ben's teeth hadn't really settled in yet and weren't really well fitted at that point, so they were giving him a little bit of grief and causing him some discomfort. He had been kind of prone to taking them out for periods of time because they were bothering him. Our bus driver Brett, he went back and started picking up cans and bottles and throwing them in the trash and kind of herding everybody towards the door and everything. Well, we had just gotten the bus loaded, and Ben walked in the bus and he looked around and he said, "I can't find my teeth. Where are my teeth?" I said, where were they? And he said, "Well, I left them on the table." I said, "You left your teeth on the table?" He said, "Yeah, I wrapped them up in a napkin and put them in a styrofoam cup and set them on the table." And he was starting to get pretty agitated about it, and he was convinced, he kept saying over and over, "Somebody knew Willie bought those teeth from me and they stole them." I said, "Well, Ben, for one, you know, we talked about this, you know, where do we keep our teeth, either in our mouth or in our bunk? You know, beyond that, I know that there's a big black market for dentures, but I really don't think anybody stole your teeth." So he was stomping around mad. He stomped off the bus. Brett came up to me and he goes, "Man, I think I threw Lovey's teeth in the trash." I said, "You what?" He goes, "Yeah." He said, "Didn't he say they were in a styrofoam cup?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, if they were on this table and they were in a cup, I threw them in the trash." Well, on the bus, there's a chute that would go down, and the trash can's actually down in the bay underneath, saves room, you know. So we went outside and went down there and popped the bay, pulled the trash can out, started rifling through it, and sure enough, we found that cup and found Lovey's teeth. He had stomped off the bus. I don't know where he went, but he came back shortly after that, after we had found him, and Brett said, Ben, I'm real sorry. I have a confession. I accidentally threw your teeth away. I was trying to get everyone off the bus. And oh, man, he blew up. Oh, he was mad. He stomped around and cussed and carried on, and oh, he was so mad. And finally, we couldn't get him calmed down. Kevin finally said, "Why don't you come with me, Ben, and just ride in the truck with me, and we'll go to the house." And so we got him calmed down and got him back to the bus yard, and he got in his truck and headed on back to the condos. And he didn't speak to Brett, I think, for about a month after that. Finally, one day we were getting ready to leave. He came on the bus with all of his stuff, and you could tell anytime he saw Brett, he'd just kind of bristle up, even if he didn't say anything. And that day he came in, and we're sitting on the couch. Everybody's kind of catching up from their week, and out of the blue, he just popped up and said, "Well, I can tell you one thing. You better not leave anything important laying around on this bus. That bus driver will throw it in the trash." And after that, he was good. He didn't. He was over it, I guess. But he had to just get his last little stab in there with it. But he was always funny with bus drivers anyway, because he didn't think anybody could drive as well as Willie's driver, Gator. Quite frequent that he would holler up there, "Bus driver, you need to slow down. Gates wouldn't have done that." So that was a real common saying on the bus. Is we'd pick on our bus driver, say, Gates wouldn't do that. So another time, quite a few years later, I'd known Ben for quite a while at this point. Asleep at the Wheel was celebrating their 40th anniversary, and they decided to film a big concert there in Austin. Willie was on the show with them. So I had called around and decided to go down and hang out. I knew all the guys, and I went down at sound check, and everything was cool. And of course, Willie didn't show up until about 30 minutes before the show started, and I'd been on the phone. I talked to Ben, and he told me when they were leaving and about what time they would be there and everything. So I was waiting around for them to get there. And as soon as the bus rolled up, Ben come off the bus. He got Willie's old Baldwin amp and trigger and brought him in the back door. I'd stepped out back, and I saw him. He had just gotten the amp and guitar out, and I went down and helped him roll it up the ramp and bring it in the back door. So we were kind of standing backstage with Trigger and that Baldwin amp in its case. So we were just, we pulled the top off the case, I think, for the amp, and we were standing there talking, and Ben looked at me and said, "Hey, I need to run check on something right quick. Will you stay here and keep an eye on these for me?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, no worries." And he walked off, and I thought, this is kind of cool. I'm sitting here babysitting Trigger and Willie's amp, and I was standing there, and he had not been gone just a couple of minutes. And since they were filming that show, they had some union guys involved with that, and they were being pretty tight on security and as far as backstage access and so forth. Well, this suit, I guess you could call him, a union guy, came up to me and very rudely demanded to know who I was and what I was doing there. Basically told me I was in his way. I apologized. I said, "Well, I'm real sorry about that." I said, this is Willie's guitar. This is Trigger and Willie's amp. One of his guys, Ben Dorcy, I helped him bring it in, and Ben asked me to stay here with the amp and guitar until he got back. He had to go check on something for Willie. Well, the guy was not going to accept that as an explanation, so he kept on, and he got kind of loud with me and was pretty rude about it. So I got kind of loud with him back, and I simply told him, "Look, I was asked to stand here and watch this guitar and this amp right here in this spot. I wasn't told to move it. I'm not letting it out of my sight, and I'm not moving it. So me and this amp and this guitar are staying right here until he gets back." The guy was giving me all sorts of grief about it, and he even turned around and stomped off and came back with a security guard. We argued a little bit more about it. Finally, Ben walked up, and I was thinking, man, this is going nowhere quick. I don't really know what to do about it. Ben walked up and said, "What's going on?" I said, "Ask him." So the guy started in on Ben and was rude to him about it, which Ben did not take very well. And he pretty much proceeded to tell that guy where he could go and what he could do when he got there. Told me not to worry about it. He'd take care of it. And the guy got mad and walked off, him and the security guard, and I didn't hear anything else about it, and nobody said anything else to me. But I always laughed. I said, you know, you about got me in trouble. I thought I was going to end up in jail over Trigger. So another thing I wanted to tell about, you know, for a long time, Ben kept telling us in the early days when I first went to work for Kevin about Waylon writing a song for him. And like I said, sometimes Ben's stories could be a little out there, and you never really knew whether he was pulling your leg or not. So he kept saying, you know, Waylon wrote a song and gave it to me. And finally one day he showed up at bus call, and like I said, he smoked a pipe. He pulled an old cassette tape out of his pocket, out of his shirt pocket, and held it up, and there's pieces of pipe tobacco hanging stuck in it and everything else. It wasn't in great shape. So we kind of dusted it out, put it in the tape deck, and sure enough, it was a recording of Waylon singing a song he had written called Ode to Ben. It was just Waylon and a guitar sitting in the back of the bus, singing into just a little cassette recorder. He told us, he said, you know, Waylon said I could have this song and have the publishing on it. It's kind of, so I'd have some mailbox money. He said Waylon told him, here, go get one of these young guys to record this and make a hit out of it so you'll have a little retirement fund. So we talked about it. We were prepared to do a new album at that point, and we decided, man, this would be really cool to do this song for Ben and record it. We got a hold of Waylon's people and actually talked to Jesse Coulter, and Jesse said, yes, Waylon wrote that song for Ben. Ben owns the publishing and the rights to it, so if y'all want to record it, if it's okay, it's up to Ben. They gave us their blessing and said, you know, yeah, this was kind of as a gift to Ben, and maybe give him a little bit of mailbox money as he's getting older. So we were all prepared to do that, and unfortunately, before we actually cut the song, Waylon passed away. And in the aftermath of that, we talked about it and decided that the timing really wasn't good because we really didn't want people to think we were just trying to cash in on Waylon's death. We were afraid they'd be taken, you know, the wrong way. But I was very fortunate. I did get to meet Waylon one time, not too long before he died. It had to have been one of his last tours. He was in the area there in Central Texas, and I was fortunate to be at that show and be backstage with Ben. So I asked Ben if he would mind introducing me to Waylon. At that point, his health was pretty poor. He couldn't really walk, had a lot of neuropathy and feet issues and such. So they had driven him up behind the stage on a golf cart, and he was sitting there waiting to go on. They actually drove him all the way onto the stage, up a ramp on the golf cart to get him up there. But while he was sitting there waiting to go on, Lovey took me over and leaned down to introduce me to him, and I got to shake hands with him and talk to him, just chit-chat for a couple of minutes. And he was extremely nice. Just a really, really nice guy. But that was my memories of Waylon, thanks to Lovey. But as far as the song goes, you know, as I said, a lot of the other Texas music guys, once they were kind of turned on to who Lovey was, after he got a little older, they started all taking him out on the road. And the main guys that he went out with were Randy Rogers, Cody Canada and The Departed, and Wade Bowen. His last run on the road was with Cody Canada 2 weeks before he passed away at the age of 92. So he worked right up till the end. Unfortunately, a couple of days after they got home, he stumbled and fell on his front porch and broke his hip. They put him in the hospital, and he was actually recovering and doing well, but as everybody told me, that it seemed like he was just tired and kind of decided that he was going to go out on his own terms, I think, and he wouldn't do what he needed to do. He didn't want to do the physical therapy and all that sort of stuff, so he went ahead and passed away. Anyhow, after he passed, Randy Rogers and Wade Bowen actually did go ahead and record that song, Ode to Ben, and I thought they did an excellent job. It's a great version of it. They started the song out with that old recording of Waylon singing and kind of transitioned it into them, you know, their studio cut of it, which I thought was very masterful, the way they pulled that off. And it was really nice. I was really happy about that, and really glad that somebody finally recorded that song and it was out there, you know. That's all I have for today. Like I said, I just wanted to share a few more stories about Ben, and appreciate everybody watching and sharing and liking and subscribing to these videos. I love hearing everybody's comments. And if you haven't, please, like, follow, subscribe. You click the little bell icon down there so that you'll get notifications anytime I post a new video. I love to hear from everybody. Please, I love to hear the comments and the feedback. It can be kind of weird. I'm basically sitting here staring at a wall and a camera talking to nobody, so it's nice to hear some feedback and know whether or not I'm on the right path with it, I guess you might say. But I certainly appreciate it, and as always, if you need some violin or fiddle tracks or mandolin tracks recorded, I'd love to take care of that for you. I'd love to work with you on it, and I do offer violin and fiddle lessons, so we can do those remotely, work around your schedule, make it easy. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and keep on picking.